Okay, I know that now in like a minute, I'm doing my best here. I have no internet, okay?
Okay,
Okay, if I can get on, I will.
okay.
See you soon.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so that's John.
Chris, are you up and running?
No, I'm saying that John's having issues with internet and he
Yeah,
will
we're good.
as soon as
Thanks.
he's able.
Okay.
So that's one John down. Still
Well,
need
this-
John H.
This time, Bernie, I had no trouble getting in, but I used the password,
Good.
the ID and the password, and it was
It's
easy.
amazing how well it works when you do it the right way.
Oh, no, wait a minute. You could have pressed whatever
I know, I'm only teasing.
P // but it didn't.
That was a shot at Les, actually, but
Actually, Bernie, sometimes the email will chop up the link when it gets sent out. So depend on the person's email client, it can put spaces or line feeds in the link, and that will cause it to screw up when someone tries to log in.
okay. That'll do things. Okay. Let's see.
Bernie,
Yes,
would you like me to contact John H?
yes, please.
All right. I will do that in a moment.
Okay. Let's see. Who haven't we said? Hello, family Whitman.
Oh, Bernie.
Part of the family Whitman, anyway. I
Just
see
one
one.
lonely fan Whitman tonight. Others are they're around. They'll be in and out.
Okay, they'll flitter through.
But Mama Bear's taking the helm.
Okay.
Hi, Swapna here. I was able to join.
Ah, Swapna.
Yay,
Nice.
Swapna!
Yay.
I swap now.
Hey, it's been a long time, everybody. Belated Happy New Year.
Thank you. And to you too.
You too.
Hi, Swapna.
And while we're at it, happy Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And happy soon to be Valentine's Day.
Almost.
All right.
Almost.
Bernie, John Govro's trying to join,
Yes.
but it looks like he's having some challenges.
Okay. That's okay. And let's see, who can we pick on? Where'd you go? Once we get past the 25 people, you got to go to the next page here to find people. Where are you?
Bernie, what are the door prizes tonight?
Books.
Books.
Books. We have a book called The Practical Astronomer. I think if I remember right, I have to get rid of my background here so that you can see things a little bit better. Let's see. Practical Astronomer. Okay. Very good book. I was glancing through it and I thought, oh, gee, I might keep that for myself. We have a historical book, The Glass Universe. It's about the ladies who worked at Harvard Observatory, and they took the measure of the stars. These are the ladies that worked in all of that, and where we get most of our maps from now. And this is not an affront to anybody, I hope, but it's a very good book. The Idiot's Guide to Astronomy.
It's serious.
It is actually a very good book, because you get books like The Practical Astronomer or other books that put it in terms that they figure you should understand. That book is very good because it puts it in very basic, simple terms. And that's why I like that. And I wish everybody luck to getting one of those books tonight. All right. So we're up and running. Anyway, hello. I guess we need everybody, if they could, to turn off the cameras. and-
Bernie,
Yes, dear?
Bernie,
Yes.
I just talked to John H. and he forgot. But he's going to come in and he's not positive he can do his presentation, but he's going to do the best he can in the next few minutes before it's his turn.
Okay, well, we'll put him as third in line or fourth in line, depending what happens to our John.
Okay, so you know what? It is 3:34. So at this point in time, I just like to remind everyone to turn off their cameras and mute their microphones. And we'll see everybody in a minute and we'll get started with tonight's meeting.
Okay. That's you too, Larry.
I'm working on it. Camera off. Okay, right there.
Good.
And mute the microphone or no?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right, now I get to talk to a blank screen. Hi, welcome to the February 2022 version of our all members meeting. I've decided to call it that, the all members meeting instead of our regular members meeting, because I don't want to imply that some of us might be irregular. I would like to welcome our visitors and people that are new to the club. They might be on their first meeting with us. I know a lot of faces here. We're here at this point last Friday for the Astronomy 101. I hope to see you again next week at that. My name's Bernie. Last name's Vanessa. I'm the chair of this organization and have been on previous occasions. And I'm very pleased to be doing it once again. There are several advantages and likes about this club. I like the camaraderie we have in this club. I like the familiarity you can develop with people, the friendships. I like being able to talk to anyone about anything, whatever their pleasure in the hobby is. We can talk about it, or most people are willing to talk about it. We have a couple of real nice things in the club. We have a lending library, which unfortunately at the moment is kind of hard to operate. We have the Astro 101, which I just mentioned, an educational program that you're more than welcome to come to and partake in. You do not have to be a new member to do that. We also have an awards program. You'll hear more about that, I'm sure, because that's one of my favorite things to talk about. And something else that we have is a loaner program. I know a lot of you new people do not have equipment, or you have equipment that's, to be generous, might be somewhat wanting. You might want to try new equipment or different equipment. This is a good way to do that without going through the expense of buying and selling material or equipment that might not be suitable for you. And on that subject, I will ask Melissa to pop back in and she can tell us what's going on with the loaner scopes.
Hey, everybody. So, yeah, we've got some scopes available to loan out. There's excuse me. There's timing. We have a couple of Dobbs to put out. We have a 5-inch refractor with a go-to mount. So some very beginner-friendly scopes. If you want to borrow one, you get it generally for a month. If no one has requested it at the end of that month, we can extend the time. So that's all nice and wonderful. There's some extended reading on the website if you go looking for it. I can put the email for the Loaner Scope program if you want to get in touch with me. And it's all good. That's about it.
Okay, well, that's good. They're getting used. They get around, which is good. Let's see, where are we here? Oh, yes. I was talking with Doug Turner today. Hi, Doug. Doug has agreed graciously to take upon himself the task of putting together next year's calendar. Now, it would greatly help if we could start thinking about photographs for the calendar. Start planning your picture taking for this spring and this summer, and we can get some pictures in for the calendar for next year. I think that'd be a great idea. And definitely, Doug, thank you very, very much. The calendar is absolutely fantastic. Good job. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. I'm running down here. I've written the same thing 2 or 3 times. Tonight we don't have well, yes, we do have speakers tonight. We have great speakers tonight. These are non-professional astronomers. We have, hopefully, okay, we'll just go at it this way. We're hoping to get John Govro to speak to us for a little bit about some of his experiences in the hobby. And hopefully John H. from the Blue Water Astronomical Society to speak to us. He has something to say to us about something that's happened to him in this hobby. We also have Brett Tatton, also of the Blue Water Astronomical Society. I think we're just going to adopt that Blue Water Astronomical Society. I don't know, we'll just bring them all in. He will be speaking to us on an innovation of his, and I'll let him tell you about that when we get to it. But first, we're gonna go ladies first, and we will have Joanne Salsey come and speak to us. I will let her explain what she's going to talk about. Joanne's been a member of this organization for a good 10 years anyway. Well, most of it's been good, I guess. Turn your microphone on, Joanne, and have at it.
Joanne, I'm just going to interrupt for a second before you start.
Okay.
Joanne, your polls have disappeared, so you need to give me a minute or so and let me put them back. I set this all up before the meeting and they've disappeared. So I'll do it in the background while you're speaking. So just give me a minute, okay?
I'll talk real slow.
Okay, we know who's getting the Idiot's Guide to Astronomy.
Yeah, I was actually excited when you said that. That would be the book for me. Okay, so should I go ahead and share my screen or should we wait for Sue?
Just give me a minute. If you want to get started, Joanne, that will be fine. But I need to get a minute to get these back into the Zoom meeting. So I apologize for that, everybody. This is totally my fault. They have disappeared on me. So I just have to create them. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Let's blame Zoom. Bernie, do you have any more filler before I start?
No, I'm good, except for what I've got for at the end of the meeting. If you, oh, go away. People know that I'm in a meeting at this time of day. Why do they phone?
All right, well, I'll start and I'll just talk slow because the polls are kind of towards the beginning of my presentation. But I can start. So I will share my screen. And can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, you just have to go into your slideshow though.
Yep, I'm gonna do that. There we go. So yes, my name's Joanne, and as Bernie said, I've been a member for, I think, longer than 10 years. Just to put a little bit of perspective on this, I took an astronomy course at Mohawk College with John Govro back in the mid-90s. So I go way back to the 90s, but I didn't join the club until probably about 15 years ago. And lo and behold, there was John again. So it's kind of like full circle. So tonight I'm going to talk about the love of astronomy that I have and my journey to become a goober. And I'm not sure if you all know what a goober is. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? I have no idea. But what's a goober, you ask?
Peanut.
Yeah, that's one thing it is. So a goober in the astronomy world is lovingly known as a goal-oriented observer. And that's a person who likes to find specific things in the sky, and they have a goal, and they have a list, and they know what they're looking for, and they may or may not find it, but they have a goal. And I never observed that way until a few years ago, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. And so I'm getting ahead of myself, though, because we do need to start at the beginning, and this is where Sue comes in. So I'm going to try and stall. I'm just wondering, I know I can't see you, and you probably can't see me right now, but I'm just wondering when we can talk again and I can show you the polls, if you maybe tell me if you've ever heard this word before, because it was new to me and it sounded gross. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I want to be a goober. And then Bernie explained it to me and it wasn't so bad. So, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to start at the beginning, which is the fact that we all have an astronomy origin story. And that's when we first fell in love with the sky, day or night sky. And for me, I was 9 years old when that happened. And I looked at the moon through the Buffalo Science Museum telescope. They opened up their telescope on Wednesday evenings. And somehow my cousin and I found out about it in grade 3 and grade 4. And we dragged our dads down there and we got to look through the telescope, and that was it. And I just knew I just had to be an astronomer. And here I am, fast forward many, many, many years. And now I am an astronomer, an amateur astronomer, but I am an astronomer. So that was amazing. That's where it started, way back. So one of the poll questions that Sue's working on, and so you can think about it until she gets it loaded here, is when was the first time you fell in love with the sky? So the poll question is going to be, the answers options that you'll have are when I was a child, when I was in my teens, when I was an adult, yesterday, or other. So think about your answer, and as soon as Sue can post the poll, that's what we're going to do, because I thought it'd be kind of fun to see when everybody first fell in love with the sky. Yes, Sue?
We have an issue because there's two of us logged in under the Hamilton and Amateur Astronomers sign in. Unfortunately, I can't access the poll.
Aha.
Okay, do you want me to log out too?
So Chris, if you log out, theoretically, I should get the poll back.
Okay, let me do that.
Thanks, Chris. So I hope you all know your answer. Oh, so now the recording stopped because we logged out.
Yeah, but that's okay.
I can't get in.
You're in, Mike.
No, I didn't say that. I know.
No, Joanne, it's still not allowing me to do the polls. I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to make this work tonight. So
can I ask for people to turn their mics on, and so then just shout out your answers? Be kind of cool to hear what people have to say.
And that would be fine.
COVID.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's Tom Hansen. I was a kid. I was terrified of the dark, and bit by bit, I got further and further down the footpath. And finally, I was able to stand outside for more than 2 minutes and look at the moon. And that's when I fell in love with astronomy, overcoming my fear of the dark.
That's amazing.
And
Awesome.
if you read Chris Hadfield's book that he wrote for children,
Yeah.
he had a similar experience. And I was really struck when I read Hadfield's book, and I'm now sharing that with my granddaughter. Thank you.
That's awesome, Tom. Thank you. How many other people fell in love with the sky when they were children? Let's say under the age of 12, for example.
We did. I did. Here, let me raise my hand.
I can't see the hand raises, but
Yeah, Swapna here. Sure, I've been in love with the sky since I was a child. I was quite young when the Halley's Comet came through, I think in 1986. And I remember seeing it, going to a very to an astronomy, I don't know, a center, and seeing the comet through a 6-inch, but I was also tracking it from the balcony of my home. It was just awesome. So yeah, very young, Joanne.
very cool. How many people, if anyone, fell in love with the sky when they were in their teens?
I'm one of them.
Me too.
I started reading science fiction, I think, with Jules Verne back when I was 12 years old. And shortly thereafter, I thought, wow, I got to get myself a little telescope. So for $29 back in the early 50s, I got a telescope with, people wouldn't even recognize it as one now, a refractor. But with my dad, I was out on the front lawn with a boyhood friend of mine. Oh, there's something bright over there. Let's look at that. And we turned the scope on it, and oh my God, it was Saturn.
Yeah.
What a kick. It was just, that hooked me, and I've been there ever since.
Yeah, see what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, like you actually, it just gobsmacks you. Anybody fall in love with the sky as an adult?
Yep, like me.
Okay.
How about yesterday? Or the last clear night or day, whatever that was.
I'll have to chime in on that one, because I tend to fall in love with the sky anytime I look at something new.
Ah, that's a good answer.
That's a good answer.
Any other comments people want to share before I move on?
I used to be interested in the 1990s.
What's that? Sorry.
Yeah, I was quite interested in astronomy back in the 90s.
Okay.
Ken and I were going through Arizona, and of course Arizona has very, very clear skies there. And fortunately for us, believe it or not, we spotted 3 UFOs in the sky, and ever since then, I've been looking at that sky every day since then. And I'm still looking for the buggers.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I just bought a telescope recently, just past fall time. And I started looking at the moon and Saturn and Jupiter, and it was amazing. Well, my scope's not a powerful one, but it's powerful enough to see certain things. But yeah, I'm happy with it. But I'll step up on that.
That's awesome, Larry. Thanks.
Right.
Okay. Well, we've already talked a little bit about it, but what was it that you first saw? I saw the moon. Some people have seen UFOs. Some have seen Saturn. So what was it that you first saw that made you fall in love with the sky? So the poll question was, what was it that you first saw? Was it a planet, the moon, the sun, stars and or constellations, deep sky objects, or other? And I think UFOs would be considered as other. So we already got that category taken care of. So how many people saw, the first thing they saw was a planet? We already heard about Saturn. Anybody see Jupiter?
Saturn's rings and the moon.
Saturn's rings and the moon?
Yeah.
Awesome. Isn't the moon awesome?
Yeah.
The moon's my favorite. Anybody see the sun through a properly filtered telescope?
As a first object?
Yeah.
Also,
Because I know a lot of times for public outreach, you'll often see telescopes set up during the day with the filters for the solar viewing. And actually, that was when our daughter first looked through a telescope and she saw the sun. So I just wondered if there were other people that saw that for the first time.
Yes, I used to do outreach with the RASC at the Science Center in Toronto. And I had a 80 millimeter Vixen refractor and had a filter on it, Kendrick filter. And that always impressed people. And then you could tell them about how old it was and what the dark spots were. And that was really fascinating. And then we would try to encourage some of those people to come out when we had a dark sky party. But the sun was a real grabber.
It is, because it's during the day too, right? You don't have to stay up late to see anything. Anything else people want to share before we move on?
Yeah, Swapna here. I can share one because this, I think, was a very unusual and once in a lifetime experience for me. I was able to go to a 40-inch telescope in India and look at Saturn from that 40-inch, and it's the most incredible view from a 40-inch telescope that I've ever seen, let alone from a 40-inch. But the you could see the colors, the rings. It was just awesome.
Oh, I bet it was breathtaking. Like, just can't imagine that. That's amazing.
Sure. Yeah.
One thing I saw, my first objects was the two transits of Venus.
Oh, wow, that's unique.
Yeah, in 2004, I went down to Bayfront Park because it was around dawn, and the other one I could see from my balcony at sunset. I had filter glasses.
That's amazing. Wow. I just saw, Mercury for the first time, and some club members can probably remember that because that's all I talked about at one of our council meetings. I finally got to see Mercury, and that was probably just about 3 years ago. And to see Venus and Mercury is amazing in the morning sky or in evening sky, and they're breathtaking. So that's awesome.
It may be apocryphal, but I read it once that Copernicus said that he never had ever seen Mercury because he couldn't get up early enough in the morning. I don't know if it's true or not, but I read that in a book, so it must be true.
A cold, clear night in the middle of the Atlantic in a dark, clear sky.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
It was.
Wow. I'm just visualizing that. That sounds good. Just to be on a boat in the Caribbean Sea where it's warm. Well, thanks everyone for sharing. I appreciate your flexibility with technology. And actually, it was kind of nice to just talk about these stories. So I know astronomy is special to us because we are known as the Hamilton Amateur Astronomers. So we have a common interest. But what does that actually mean? Did you know that the Latin root of the word amateur is ama, which means to love? And since Valentine's Day is just a few days away, that's why I was focusing on this topic for my talk. So yeah, it actually means to love. So we're essentially people in the greater Hamilton area who pursue astronomy for the pure enjoyment of it. But being an amateur astronomer can be very overwhelming with a lot to learn and look at in the sky. And if you've ever been to a star party or just under some really dark skies, you know what I'm talking about, because the sky above you can just look like a blanket and you don't even know where to look first. So where to begin? It was at my first star party at Cherry Springs, Pennsylvania, a few years ago, where I observed many HAA members planning for what they wanted to look at in the sky that evening. And that was a new concept for me. I had never really thought about doing that. And members like Matthew and Janice and Chris and Les and John and Denise and Chris, they were just amazing role models for me. It was then that I first learned how to plan my observing, and I planned it at the star party for that night, and I got to see the targets that I was looking for. So it was amazing for me, and it kind of opened up a whole new world. And it was also when I learned about observing programs, because I never knew they existed. I didn't know what they were. But they're a great way to learn and focus on specific targets in the sky, all while achieving goals. And most of the time, it's a certificate. And the key word for me is focus. Using an observing program really kept me and still keeps me from getting overwhelmed because there is just so much up there. And I kind of liken it to a scavenger hunt in the sky. And it's a lot of fun. It sounds like work, but it's a lot of fun at the same time. So our club currently has 3 observing programs, and there's more being planned. The 3 current programs are Pathways, Rising Star, and Messier. And each program has its own specific requirements. And generally, you're required to observe a specific number of objects on a list. And some programs, you don't need any equipment, and then others you would need a telescope for. So what you do is you record your observations and then you submit them for verification. And in my case, the observing program director is Bernie, so I submitted mine to Bernie. And once you successfully complete your goals and your observations are then verified, you receive a certificate and maybe even a chocolate bar. And that's what happened to me. So I received my Rising Star certificate back in November. And because I had joked about also receiving and wanting an astronomy themed chocolate bar, I was also awarded a Mars bar. And so chocolate's always a great reward and incentive at the same time. So that was fun. So I thought I would just talk briefly about each of the 3 programs. Pathways is a program designed specifically for the beginning observer. And it's designed to help them learn their way around the sky and to teach some of the basics of the night sky without using binoculars or a telescope. It's just using your eyes. And that's a great way to get started with orienting yourself to what's up there in general. The next program is the Rising Star Observing Award Program, and that's the one that I participated in. And that one is also designed for the beginning observer, but in this case, you can use your eyes, binoculars, or a telescope, and I used all 3. This is an example of what I submitted. Whoops, sorry. Oh, I don't know what happened there. You're getting to see everything all over again.
It's so good, you just got to have more.
Whoa, there we are.
Man.
Okay. So it's an example of what I submitted to Bernie, and I documented what I saw, where I saw it, how I saw it, and I gave a description, and they didn't have to be very professional. I mean, you could see my description for the double-double, that I was just so excited to be able to split the double-double, and that was my description. And then it's optional in this case to draw a sketch, which I enjoyed doing because it just gave more meaning to what I was observing. And there's no time limits for these awards. And in my case, it was actually fun to do it over the 4 seasons of the year. So it took me over a year to complete the list. And I found that being goal-directed also helped me with planning my observing sessions. I needed to plan out ahead of time what I wanted to look for and what I needed to look for. And if you remember, that was the skill I first learned at Cherry Springs. So it kind of went full circle. And what I learned there helped me to work on this program. So the third observing program is the Messier program. And that's designed for those who want to look for Charles Messier's 110 objects in the night sky. And this talk is rather timely because March is known as Messier Marathon Month. Try saying that real quick times. And the Messier marathons are when you can see most of those objects within a 24-hour period. And we have 2 chances this year, just because of the way the moon is, the moon cycle. So the weekend of March 5th and the weekend of April 2nd are 2 opportunities this year to get all those objects in one night. So Bernie keeps pressuring me to work on that award, but I am not doing a 24-hour session, that's for sure.
Well, I may interject for just 1 second there. The Messier Marathon is not designed to be used in an award, although because you don't have time to actually observe the targets that you're looking at.
But you could start.
Yes, certainly.
Definitely start. So we are going to visit our website where our amazing webmaster has just loaded up all of our observing programs onto the site. So we're going to have a look at that before I finish, because I want you to see where all the information is for these awards, and so that you can also become a goober. So I am going to stop sharing because I think I have to stop sharing before I start sharing the website. So I'll do that. But just take note of the address. It's basically our website, and then you'll see a tab at the top of the page, and it's easy to find. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to start sharing again. But this time, I'm going to go right to the website. So can you see the website page?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So at the very top, you'll see HAA observing programs, and underneath are the 3 current programs. And I'm going to select Rising Star. And I just want to show you some of the features here. So Chris has actually loaded for you the actual document. So you can download the whole document in a PDF format. But if you don't do that, all the information is also listed here. And what I really wanted to show you was the list of the requirements for this particular award program. So for example, you need to find 12 constellations out of this big list. You need to find 4 planets from this list, etc. So this is the list of everything you need to find. And then at the very bottom of the page, you'll see all the rules, but then you'll see the actual form that you fill out when you're finished, and then you would submit that to Bernie. And maybe you'll get a chocolate bar too, I don't know, but I liked my Mars bar. And the last thing I just wanted to tell you about, I'm just going to show my face again here. I don't know if you can see me. Just give me 1 second. There I am. I just wanted to briefly mention that we're going to be holding a contest for our younger amateur astronomers, ages 5 to 12 in the month of March. And I don't want to tell you too much, but just watch for that information in the March newsletter. So if you think about the fact that most of us fell in love with astronomy when we were young, we thought it'd be a really good opportunity to get kids excited in astronomy as well. So thank you for listening to my story, and I hope you love astronomy as much as I do, because it's been a lifelong venture, that's for sure. So thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And a happy Valentine to you.
Yes. Happy Valentine's.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Joanne? Just unmicrophone or unmute yourself and ask your question, or put it in the comment or in the chat, and we'll catch up as we go. We're going to move along here, and we're going to invite Brett Tatton from the Blue Water Astronomical to bring his camera on and his microphone on.
Hello, everyone.
There you are. Hello, Brett. We
Hi.
finally meet.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, I was going to thank you for joining us from the Blue Water Astronomical Society. I've often thought that the location of your observatory would be very good for nice dark skies, but I tend to think that you would have the tendency to be dealing with a fair amount of wind. Am I making that assumption correctly?
It's actually tucked into a valley, so it's pretty good.
Oh, okay.
And if you're inside a building with really high walls around you and the roof open so you can look up, you're also sheltered from the wind.
Ah, okay.
The observing area is 25 feet by 25 feet.
That's a good size.
Wow.
And how many pieces of equipment are in there permanently, or are they all temporary setups?
We have a primary setup on a pier, and everything after that is somewhat temporary. There's a lot of flexibility with tripods and stuff like that. Of course, there's been a bit of a hiatus with COVID, of course. So
okay.
We haven't had too many organized events happening for the last 2 years.
Okay, good. Okay, well, you're going to talk to us about a little innovation you came up with.
Yeah. Well, I was going to get some help from Sue. She's got some visual support, and we're going to try to use my webcam so I can actually stand in front of the subject and demonstrate it.
I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and you can talk about the slides first, but I just want to let everybody know Brett is in a really small window right now on your screen. In order to really see what he's going to demonstrate to you, if you click on the view option, so you'll find that on your screen, it will say view, and it'll look like 9 squares beside it. You click on that, and if you just click speaker, it will show Brett in full screen for you. And then it'll be much easier for you to see what he's going to show us. So if everyone wants to give that a shot now before I screen share, Brett will become big for you, and he'll be the only person on the screen, and you won't have all the little boxes. So click
and
on
everybody
view.
else should mute their microphone, or else they'll appear instead.
Yes, and you know what, Steve? You just took the words right out of my mouth. So you need to mute your mics and click on speaker view so that you can see Brett's full presentation.
When Sue is not screen sharing, I'm going to turn my setup around, and on the other side of my monitor, I've actually got the telescope on the tripod setup. So that's going to involve a show and tell and a partial disassembly, and any opportunity to interrupt me at any time, Susan especially. And I'll answer your questions as they pop into your head, sir. There you go.
Just give me a second here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go, Brett.
Thank you. So what I had to take some pictures to send them away. I got in contact with Jerry Oltion, whose column in Sky and Telescope is known as the Astronomer's Workbench. He is taken over a few years back from Canadian Gary Saranac, who also had a amateur telescope making column. And that is one of my favorite parts of the magazine. And I've always been interested in tinkering with telescopes and looking for the ultimate next best thing. So the picture there, it's me standing out in front of the house when the weather was a lot nicer. And what you see is a bowling ball mount. The original article Jerry had was a couple of years before that, got me thinking about bowling ball mounts. And that nice little telescope there, I'm going to show it to you when I get back to the my webcam screen, is a 8-inch f4 Newtonian. And it's a sweet little scope. I picked it up for a song a couple of years back. It came with a German equatorial mount of manual and not very sturdy, and a aluminum tripod. So I ended up giving those away or selling them for very little money to a friend, but I kept the tube rings, which clamp the tube to the mount, and possibly the balance weights. I think I kept those too, so you can see them in the picture there on the end of the shaft. Basically, I drilled a hole right through the bowling ball. Oh, there you go, Sue. Yeah, and not only did I come up with this mount, I have another favorite device which is bought. You might notice there's a cell phone sitting on top of the ball there, and I actually got the cradle for the phone. There's a technology that came out in 2020 from Celestron called the StarSense Explorer, and in order to get this wonderful pointing device, which uses your smartphone, I had to buy one of the telescopes that it came with to get the cradle and the unlock code for the software. And I found out it worked really, really well on the basically an excellent Christmas scope. Usually they call them Christmas trash scopes, but this one was one of the nicest ones I ever saw. It was like an F9 80mm refractor. And at low power, it was great. But I always being a tinkerer, I ended up moving this technology to one of our club's F6 8-inch Dobsonians using duct tape and whatnot. The shiny thing in the middle on top of the ball there is just a piece of aluminum sheeting that I bent, and I replicated the angle that the stock bracket had on the bot scope, and binder clips there were standing pretty good for a high-tech solution to clip the store-bought stuff to the made in the shop with a vise and a hammer. Well, it wasn't as brutal as a hammer. You might have noticed in the previous slide that it was sitting on top of a fairly sturdy tripod. This was the first iteration. I had a Meade scope, and I put the felt pads on the top of each tripod leg there, and the ball sat on top of that, and I put a notch in the base there, and it was working really good, except for it wobbled quite a bit. So that tripod's not very is pretty flimsy compared to the sturdy field tripod. Here's the sturdy field tripod, and in order to put the felt pads, I went to the plumbing store. You can see the sticker there, and I just peel and stick the felt pads that you normally put to the bottom of kitchen chairs and tables. And you can buy those for $1 at the dollar store, and I have an endless supply if they get wet or broken or compressed too much. So go ahead and move it ahead. Here's a close-up of the StarSense bracket. It's kind of confusing because it's on an angle. That is my house. It's not on a 45. In order to make the bracket sit on the ball without teeter-tottering, at that point I just put some foam blocks. But I found a large O-rings work pretty good too. So I can show you that a little bit further on when we actually look at the actual scope. Yeah, oh yes, and guess what? When you're using your smartphone to all night long, you drain the batteries. So this little drawstring bag that the StarSense cradle came in, I just put a power tank in there and ran a sync cord over to the phone, and it just hangs over one of the screws on the tube rings. Thanks, Sue. Do you run out of pictures?
That's it for pictures. So I'll stop sharing and you can turn your webcam around.
So initially that was an article that I worked on with the columnist, Jerry Oltion. I'm still on a small screen. Is that the way we want it?
I have you as speaker view and you look good to me. So if everybody's on speaker view, you should be good to flip the webcam around.
Perfect. Yeah. So anyways, I worked with the columnist for a while, and we produced that article, and it shows some details there that we didn't look at them all. Oh, I'm going to have to go around and get in the picture, I guess. Please stand by. My phone in my pocket, unless I need some additional lighting. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yeah, you're good.
Here we are. Aim the camera up a little higher. How's that? That looks pretty good.
That looks good.
Yeah. So I'll move the camera a little longer later on and show you the tripod part of it a little closer, perhaps. But what we're seeing here is piece of 1/4 inch by 2.5 aluminum bar stock, which I tapped in the middle for the big threaded rod that holds doubles as the mounting system for the telescope tube and the counterweight shaft. And up here we have the tube rings, which came with the telescope setup. So all I had to do was bolt everything together. What I was looking for was some kind of solution to use this really nice little scope. And I didn't want to make another Dobsonian for some reason. And this goes together in an afternoon if you have everything you need. The trickiest part was drilling the big hole through the bowling ball. And at first it was going to be just as alternative to the Dobsonian. It turned out to have ergonomic possibilities that I didn't appreciate until I actually went to use it. That's a pretty good angle. I'm 6 foot tall and I don't have to bring a viewing stool. I can almost see the entire sky. All I have to do is move my head up and down a little bit. So here I am viewing one spot. And if I want to show that view to a person who's not as tall as me, I can pull the scope down lower for them and aim it at the same spot in the sky and try that with a Dobsonian. You can't. And if you want to look straight up, again, the eyepiece height does not move very much. With everything balanced, it goes anywhere, it stays there. And instead of expensive Teflon and fancy Formica, which you're not going to get in the form of a sphere, and a bowling ball is a free sphere. Well, it's free if you go to your bowling lane and you say, you guys got any bowling balls that you're going to throw out or you can sell me for next to nothing? They gave me 2 of these 10-pin balls because they're just sitting under the counter. So one of them's still available. It's just so ergonomic. You can walk around, look at everything, and share the view. Right here, we're seeing that aluminum bracket, which I just put on here. Everything works on this because I found after experimenting with different things, rubber sheeting to prevent rotation. If you were to grab this telescope and there's too much friction between the ball and the felt pads, the shaft would tend to rotate inside the ball, and that wasn't really great. It kind of defeated things. And worse than that, if you put the star sense on here and you rotate the telescope and it just spins inside the ball, the alignment you do with the star sense is right out the window. So this is version 2. I can think of more improvements. Again, that doesn't matter. I'm going to grab the camera. In the article, it actually shows this detail. How are we doing there? There is an O-ring, which is about 3 inches diameter, pretty much the same width as the aluminum plate. And the nut on top jams against the aluminum plate, which is threaded, such that the threaded rod, it becomes one assembly. And then at the other end, down here, is in the article too, but when I tighten up this nut, that large washer compresses that O-ring and it becomes one big assembly. And we move back a bit further, you can see the counterweights there. I didn't trust them to stay put, so I actually put nuts on either side of the threaded rod. And when you go to carry it around the yard, you can actually pick it up from just about here, and it almost balances when you don't have the telescope on it. It's quite heavy with the telescope and the counterweights, but it is still possible to pick it up and set it down on the ground. I've been doing a lot of talking with questions there. Does anybody have any questions so far? I guess everyone's muted too to make me in speaker view. That's not working, is it, Sue? Sue, can you talk to me?
No, but I will.
Bernie will.
Yep.
Thank you, Bernie.
So, Brett, how many iterations have you gone through in your planning to create this animal?
Okay. The first thing was just to put a bolt through all that, and then find out when I talked to the guy that had done it before in an email, he actually threaded the rod all the way through. And I was trying to get that rotation not to happen. I got a friend who does aluminum welding, and I got a piece of 3-inch aluminum tubing cut down to maybe an inch thick, and just use a rubber gasket to get that friction effect, or even sandpaper. And that was semi-effective.
Yeah.
Super, not very elegant either. I still got the welded piece lying around. I might be going back in that direction just to get a larger diameter to increase the friction between the tube ring bracket and the ball, because that's the critical point, is to have at the top here, is to have that not move in relation. When you move the telescope with the ball, you want it to follow it all the time. So this is like iteration number 2. And the next one is to replace the fancy field tripod with something homemade that's you could make in the shop. I was thinking tripod legs made from crutches. You go to the Salvation Army, they always seem to have crutches for sale for $5 a pair.
Okay, yeah, that would work.
Yeah. And at the top of the tripod would actually be the cradle instead of using this pipe cap, which was great. I put a notch in the pipe cap so that everything could be straight up and down like that. So when I go to, this is the phase where I'm going to take it apart for you. It's 3 parts when you go out to the field. You can carry the tripod and the bowling ball assembly in one hand each if you've got lots of strength. So there it comes off, set it aside. I love that little scope, and now it's going to get more use. Put this back together for safekeeping. You don't want to put something down too hard and snap off some cast aluminum or steel. Now this whole assembly lifts off, and you carry it by the balance point. Set that down. I'll show you the top of the pipe cap, and then I might be done. So there's a notch in there, which allows the rod to swing straight down. Okay. I think that was all I wanted to show people. It was just to come up with all that stuff is like relatively inexpensive in the hardware store, and a little bit of time in the shop.
That's awesome.
Brett, how big a refractor could you put on there, like a doublet?
I thought about this recently because we had a bit of a run through last night. You could put a refractor on. You need a taller tripod because you're going to have that scope up high enough that you're not standing on your hand, or you're not on your knees, right? So it seems to be more suited to Newtonians because the eyepiece ends up at the far end. I used a bought tripod because I thought I would want to find the perfect height, and I guessed pretty close the first time. So I'm going hip high on this thing. And then that puts the eyepiece on that f4 at a good height. Now, if you were to use another telescope, like a 6-inch or a 4-inch, the tubes would be about the same length. But if you go to a f6 8-inch Newtonian, I think that still might work. Then you're going to have a little bit more issues with the vibration. It's a very compact setup. So there's a thing in mechanics called moment of inertia. It's basically long things are more likely to be blown around. So big, long telescope tubes tend to vibrate more in the wind. So it doesn't seem to suit itself as much to telescopes where you're behind the optical tube looking through, but that doesn't mean you can't do it.
Brett, we have a question from the chat. Who first thought of this bowling ball based type of mount?
Yeah, I try to do searches, and you know how popular something is by how many hits you get back or how many ones that look good. And it's pretty fringe, but like I think it was a couple of years before, 2 or 3, that Jerry had an article, and the gentleman was using bowling balls, but he was in an observatory, and he had them on tracking platforms. And that seemed to be the focus of that article. Meaning, once you stop tracking the sky, star hopping. I do like star hopping. I don't just use the star sense. So with that, a low power eyepiece, and a red dot finder, you can do an awful lot of Messier marathons, for instance. That is my favorite Messier marathon telescope we're looking at right now. So I think you have to focus on how comfortable it is to use, and refractors tend to be, you're looking through the back of the tube, so you have to get down lower or have a really impossibly high tripod. I hope that answers your question.
Does anybody else have any questions? If you want to put your mic on and just ask.
I see that great. There's a question. Someone had a bowling ball binocular mount. That would be good if you're laying in a lounge and you had the bowling ball behind you. You could probably move the binoculars around really well. I'm also interested in the ultimate binocular observing setup.
Oh, so the wooden chair, the lounge chair on the rotating platform with the parallelogram, right?
Oh, the parallelogram is awesome because you can also share the view with other people, which is difficult to do with binoculars, right?
Yep, but it's doable. Now, I was sort of wondering how much fun you could have walking past the bowling alley sometimes, carrying that thing along with you like a suitcase.
I think I owe the copy of the article. I haven't gone over there yet, so they're very kind. Yeah.
You just say, this is what happens when bowling balls go in the gutter too much.
Interesting thing. I ended up researching bowling ball technology, and apparently by drilling a hole through the middle and finding once you got through the 1/4 inch or so outer shell with that beautiful purple swirl, that it was like a dense polyurethane foam. But I could have run into like counterweights and crazy things that I don't know. It's kind of a proprietary secret that the high techness of bowling balls.
Well, sort of like golf balls, same idea.
There you go. Exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brett.
Oh, that was my pleasure.
Thank you very, very much. Okay. We hope you'll join us again sometime. You're always welcome as a participant in the audience, that's for sure, as are all of our friends from Blue Water.
We do have a shared friend base, and it's Starfest. Let us be back to Starfest this year.
Hopefully, that would be nice.
I'm going to go back to my other seating position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Okay, we're running a little long here, but I think we've got time to get John in here. John Govro, are you still with us anywhere?
Yes, I am.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
I've been here.
Okay, good. You got your problems all sorted out, I hope?
So, well, tonight they're your problems.
Yes, I know. Your problems are my problems.
Okay, yeah, you still want me to do this?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. My name is John Govro, and Bernie asked me to do a talk here, a little small mini presentation about my love of astronomy, very much like Joanne. And this was supposed to go back to back with Joanne. So it's going to seem out of place after the bowling ball. But I really enjoyed the bowling ball. I liked that a lot. Well done, Brett. So this is going to seem a little out of place, but now. But I was asked to give a talk about my love of astronomy. But considering the group that I'm talking to, I figured that there was little I could tell you that, you didn't already know about the love of this wonderful hobby. And I knew I was going to be coming after Joanne, and I figured she'd do a fabulous job of reminding you all of those very things. So I decided to take a little different approach. So rather than talk about my love of astronomy, I decided to talk about love and astronomy. So I'm going to tell you a little story, okay? So first thing I'm going to do here is screen share with you, if I may. So let me come back to the meeting here. So. All right. So. So the first thing I want to do is introduce you To Henry Draper. Henry Draper was a doctor. He worked at the Bellevue Hospital in New York in the mid 1800s. So far, it doesn't sound like it has much to do with love and astronomy. Later here, he was a professor and dean of medicine at New York University, which is actually the same school that he graduated from years earlier. He was also an accomplished chemist, and he was an amateur astronomer. So, in fact, his skill and passion for astronomy were so strong that he found it quite overwhelming, and he made every effort to shirk his duties and jobs and spend more and more time focusing on his hobby of astronomy. His goal was that he eventually wanted to quit his job and pursue his passion full time. He was really remarkable. In 1873, he observed and photographed the transit of Venus, and made many other remarkable accomplishments. So how did he manage to not work and just pursue the hobby? Well, wouldn't we all like to know the secret to that? Of course we would. The answer lies in the fact that this isn't actually a story about Henry Draper. It's a story about love and astronomy. And in this case, it's all about Henry's wife. Meet Mary Anna Palmer. All right. She was an American socialite, very chic. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm not seeing you advance your slides.
And yet I am. So I'll apologize to everyone. We've been having real serious internet issues here in my neighborhood. I had a hard time getting on board. It took about 15, 20 minutes of fighting to even get hooked into the meeting here and get it to work. So are none of you seeing this, seeing the slideshow?
I think you have to hit presentation mode down below.
So
it's the one closest to where it says 110%.
Okay, I am in presentation mode.
We can see your sidebar.
Yeah, the slides, it hasn't
Okay,
transferred over, John, from your
Okay,
your
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, it just changed.
Okay, so now I'm out of presentation mode. Now I see my sidebar.
That's the way it should be. We see your sidebar as well.
So you do. So
Yeah, and we can see the telescope, and we see Mrs. Henry Draper.
okay, well,
Okay.
so all right. You want me to try presentation mode again?
No, just go with it
Fine.
this way.
Doesn't matter. So all right. So the actual talk is shorter than the time we've spent talking about the talk. So so anyway, so this is his wife. So she was an American socialite, independently wealthy. Her father was a real estate agent and railroad investor. She was just rich. Okay. I don't even know where I am now. So you guys will just have to hold on. So this is horrible. Okay. I'm just going to read here. All right. Sorry, not how it's supposed to go. She was just rich, loads of money, loved Henry, married him, dropped her first name, kept her last name, became Anna Palmer Draper. So they were crazy for each other. They had, they threw wild parties at their New York home. They were happy. And being crazy about him, she very much wanted to support his pursuit of astronomy, and she had the means to do that. But as she encouraged that, she found out that she was equally passionate about astronomy. It turns out she loved it just as much as he did. So if you want an example, here's an explanation for how crazy they were for each other and for astronomy. When they got married, for their honeymoon, okay, with the means literally to go anywhere in the world, they traveled a whole 20-something kilometers from their home to go pick up a 28-inch mirror blank. okay? They spent their honeymoon, okay, grinding. They carried this thing, brought this thing back, all right, brought this thing back. Remember, this is the late 1800s here, right? Brought this thing back home, all right, ground it, polished it, silvered it, all right. And now, of course, now I can't operate the slides because I'm not in presentation mode here. So I'll just click on the different ones. So, and turned it into this, okay, in their fabulous observatory that they built, all right. So this is actually an illustration here of from the front piece of a catalog that he created. Really, really impressive telescope. And take note of the picture mid left-hand side there of the moon sitting there on the wall, that picture of the moon, okay. Actually, there, you can see it better there. This is a photograph that illustration was made from and done in an etching style so that it can reprint in the book better. This is the actual photograph here. So with this, this was the product of the honeymoon. And if you want to see that photograph hanging on the wall, there it is there. That's one of Draper's photos of the moon. So right there. So yeah, I can't operate this. So, and this dates from 1880, that one on the left. That is the very, very first photograph of the Orion Nebula. So kudos to the Drapers. Henry was actually a very, very skilled astrophotographer, and he loved doing that. So that one there is from 1880, and this one is from 1882, 2 years later, and you can see how much it had improved. The mansion, okay, became their home, half meeting place for the Academic Society of New York, and half laboratory and workshop. They hosted dinner parties there for the National Academy of Sciences. They would hold lectures and exhibits right in their home. They encouraged scientists to come and share their discoveries and explorations, and they exhibited their own astrophotography there. They had 15 great years together, working together, living together, and were truly partners. And then they were on the verge of beginning a massive systematic survey of stellar spectra. That was the plan, all right? And Henry died of pneumonia at the age of 45. Anna was 43. Anna, back to Anna here. Oh, yeah. So Anna was absolutely devastated and simply didn't want to do the work on her own. She didn't want to do it without Henry. That's what it was all about to her. It was something that they did together. It just wasn't in her to continue without him. So she packed everything up. She packed up the telescopes. She packed up the research. She packed up the lab. She packed up all the photographic equipment, right? Packed it all up and donated it all to the Harvard College Observatory, all right? She arranged to have everything transported there, assembled, housed, including building the buildings to put it all in, all right? She literally did that. In fact, the two observatories at the front and the other workshop, the lab right in the very forefront, okay, were all built specifically to house the Draper stuff. And it was there that Edward Pickering took up the task of classifying the stars according to their stellar spectra, right? The very job that the Drapers had been planning to do when Henry died, all right? So this is Edward Pickering here, all right? So he hired staff to study the spectra. Draper was not, right? Anna Draper was not among the staff. She chose to remain the driving force behind the scenes, but she visited often. The staff were all women because they were paid less than men, so Pickering could hire a larger staff, making Draper's money go farther. But among that staff were such luminaries as Annie Jump Cannon, Wilhelmina Fleming, Henrietta Swan Leavitt, right? You know that name, who discovered the means to measure intergalactic distances using Cepheid variable stars. So really quite remarkable. Although staying connected from a distance, All right. And there's some of the team right there. Okay, that was there's the team there that that was hired to do that, all that work. Staying connected from a distance, Anna Draper wrote to Pickering often. In fact, over the years that went on, they corresponded several times a week. They got on very well as friends and colleagues, and that circle included Pickering's wife, Lizzie. Every letter that that Anna wrote to him began, "My dear Professor Pickering," and every letter that he wrote back in response began, "My dear Mrs. Draper," and that went on for years and years. She insisted on being kept up to date on all of the work that went on there. All right. She may have been behind the scenes, but she was very hands-on. She participating in choosing the direction of research, the deployment of equipment. She knew her stuff. And of course, to her, this was her husband's work, or at least his legacy. She also funded Pickering's expeditions to the American Southwest in search of an observing site that was in a more suitable climate than the American Northeast, where Harvard was. Pickering found one, and that is now the home of the Mount Wilson Observatory, where Edwin Hubble used Henrietta Swan Leavitt's Cepheid variables. Remember her? She's part of that team, and in this picture right here, used them to measure the distance to the Andromeda Galaxy and prove that the universe was much more vast than previously imagined. This is right here is one of the volumes of the Draper catalog. All right. And they went on to, and there you can see Annie Jump Cannon's name and Edward Pickering's names attached to it there. They went on to produce, to do exactly what Draper had intended to do. And they produced the spectra of thousands of stars, cataloged them all, and determined the type of stars that that they were dealing with out there in the sky. It was a remarkable project. So Anna lived to be 75 years old. She never remarried. She was absolutely devoted to the memory of her husband and felt the best way to honor that was through the continuation of his work. And by the time she died, she had put the equivalent of the modern day equivalent of millions and millions of dollars into the observatory and its operation. She funded it and kept it going for all of those years. And in her will, she left what in today's money would be the equivalent of millions more so that they could continue that work into the future. She also founded and funded the National Academy of Sciences Henry Draper Gold Medal for contributions to astrophysics. The award is given every 4 years, and it continues to this day. The list of past recipients is a who's who of 20th century astronomy, including George Hale, George Ellery Hale, right, as in the Hale telescope, the Hale Observatory, I should say, Vesto Slipher, Harlow Shapley, Annie Jump Cannon, Martin Schwarzschild is in the Schwarzschild radius around black holes, Penzias and Wilson, right, cosmic microwave background radiation, Subramanian Chandrasekhar and Lyman Spitzer, and you recognize those two names because they both have space telescopes named after them, the Chandra Space Telescope and the Spitzer Space Telescope. And most recently, just last year in 2021, the award went to Shepard Dolman and Haino Falk. Here they are right here, okay. And I'm going to actually just read here, I'm going to read the actual citation, okay, from the National Academy of Sciences. For their vision and their leadership within the Event Horizon Telescope collaboration, embracing theory, instrumentation, observation, and analysis, in combining radio telescopes around the world to image the shadow of the supermassive black hole in the nearby galaxy M87, thereby validating Einstein's general relativity. And fittingly, as you can see here, Shepard actually works at Center for Astrophysics at Harvard. All right, so which sprang out of Draper's contributions. So, and you all know what they're talking about. They're talking about that black hole right there. Okay. So, so here's a beautiful portrait of Anna that was done back in her time. Henry and Anna's romance was brief but passionate, and in each other they found their biggest supporters and helpers. Certainly together they were able to spread their passion to others and propel the sciences of stellar astrophysics, spectroscopy, astrophotography beyond what anybody else had dreamed at that time. And the short answer is that is what you can do when you bring together love and astronomy. So, and that's it. That's the end of my presentation. So there you go. So
Awesome. Very, very, very good. Very entertaining as well.
all right, there you go. Good. Thanks, Bernie.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Okay. Anybody have any questions in regards for John?
Question.
Sure. Go ahead, Paul.
Is it Draper Engineering named after Dr. Draper?
I'm sorry, I couldn't make that out.
Draper Engineering.
What is that?
They're a huge engineering firm that deal with space. They're heavily involved in the recent missions that are going to go to the moon for all kinds of stuff in 2024, 2027. They're an American firm. If you want to see a really interesting company, look up Draper Engineering, and they have their fingers in everything.
Okay, interesting. I will certainly do that. So I didn't have the answer. We have an answer from Brett. Brett says that's another Draper.
Okay.
So good. Thanks, Brett. Good question. I didn't know. So
Now, John, you and I did not discuss what you were going to be speaking to, and you were not here when at the beginning of the meeting when I was asked about what books we would be giving away in door prizes. One of the books we are giving away today, which I've already announced, is The Glass Universe.
oh, which has wonderful stories about all of the people I was just talking about the Drapers, about Henry and Anna and the others.
So whoever chooses to take this book has some very good reading coming up, and they have a good preface from you. Thank you so very much. Let's see. Okay, no, that looks like it for you. I think, seeing that we're running behind time here, and we do have another speaker, what I think we will do is we'll take a short 5-minute get up and stretch break, come back, and then I will ask John H. to give his little bit of presentation, and then we'll proceed, or actually we'll do the draws, then we'll get the presentation, and then we'll ask Matthew to come on and close us out. Okay, so I will see everybody back here in at 5:02. Get up, get your coffee, stretch your legs. I'll see you in a few minutes. You can sit and chat if you like to. Oh. Okay, so what are we doing here?
Everybody left, Bernie.
Yeah, it seems that way. I don't think they left. What do we got? We still have 42 people here, but everybody's flushing at the same time or making coffee.
Delicately put.
Yeah, that's okay. I had to get up and take a little trip myself, so give everybody a couple of minutes. Yeah, I'm not too worried about going long tonight. As long as you're okay, you don't have to worry about it.
Mine's about 20 to 23 minutes in that range.
Okay. Yeah, it should work. We're good. We're good.
I was thinking the same thing as Matthew.
Which part?
About running long.
Well, I think we're okay.
If you're interested, my presentation will run about 12 to 15 minutes.
Okay, so 15, 40, and I've only got 5 minutes, 8 minutes. Yeah, so we should be done by 9:45, give or take a touch.
I had writer's block this month when I was trying to come up with my talk. I absolutely had no clue what I was going to do, even on Wednesday.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know I'm usually half done by Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I actually finished it today, which is not the way I usually do things.
Yeah. I'm guessing that you'll probably, well, I shouldn't say it because then it's not right. But I'm thinking the Heart Nebula has got to be somewhere in there.
You know what? I have absolutely no Valentine's Day theme in this whatsoever.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's just a regular talk about different things.
Okay. Well, that'll work.
Okay, Bernie, our 5 minutes is
just about
up.
up. Okay.
Yeah.
Works for me. Okay. So let's get myself on here. Okay. Do we have the family Whitman with us in the background here somewhere? There we are. Okay, good. Okay. Good. So now we'll ask Paul to shut his camera off, please.
That's okay. We can share the limelight with Paul.
That's okay. I'm sure you can. Okay. I think everybody's back. I hope everybody's back. I'm going to start anyway. As I mentioned before the meeting started, we do have 3 door prizes to give out. And I will identify them here momentarily, but when you are selected, please let us know that you're here and you hear it. You have to turn your microphone on to do that. And then at some point you will have to get in touch with me. And that's easy enough. That's chair@amateurastronomy.org. You'll find it pretty easy. Our first book in the lot today is, hopefully this will, I'm going to have to close off the back. No, there we go. It's The Practical Astronomer. Very good book, very handy book. A couple of astronomy hacks in it as well. Covers pretty much anything you want to know at an entry level into this hobby. Our second book is The Complete Idiot's Guide to Astronomy. Now, I've gone through this book and I've actually found a couple of things in here that I went, oh, really? Okay, well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. So it's not an absolute idiot's guide. I don't know. It depends how I want to look in the mirror, I guess. Our third book is The Glass Universe, and it relates directly to what John was speaking about just moments ago. It's about the ladies who worked at Harvard College or Harvard University on that very same project that he was speaking about. Okay, so what do you have for us, Family Whitman? I presume you have 3 numbers?
Yes, we do. So the first winner is Matthew.
Matthew.
I'll pass, thanks. I have most of those.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And in that case, we have Linda C.
Linda C. I don't even see Linda C.
We've lost a couple of members, so hopefully those we've got are still here. Linda C, you with us?
She's not there anymore.
Okay, well,
I might have to reroll.
we might have to do some rerolling.
Okay, well, in that case, next we have Peter Walsley.
Peter, you're still here somewhere, right? Aren't you? Huh.
I don't see him either.
All right then. Definitely gonna have to reroll. That's okay. The last name on the list is Dan Copeland.
Dan? Dan, would you be interested in any of these 3 books? I know you're here somewhere.
Dan is not here.
Oh, geez, ever.
Okay, well, we'll just keep on. If everyone can bear with
Interesting.
us.
Huh.
Light zone. Make sure they don't draw your name or you'll disappear.
Robert Richardson, are you with us today?
Bob?
I am, yeah.
Yay!
Hey, Bob, you won something last month, didn't you?
I did, that's right.
All right.
Just lucky.
There you go.
Well,
It's
you
okay.
can't,
You can use up,
can't,
you can use up your luck now, and I'll take over your luck when we get back to the 50-50 draws.
Okay.
You can't refuse. We don't have the time. That's
Okay. Next.
And then next we have Rosemary Kelch.
Rosemary, I see you down there. Turn your microphone on, Rosemary.
We'd be interested in the Glass Universe.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Okay, and then our last person is.
It's all changing. Why?
Yeah, all the numbers changed on this. Oh, wait, there we go. No.
Just recount.
Okay. Bear with us, folks.
41.
There we go.
Paula Owen.
Paula. I know Paula's out there somewhere.
Yes, I am.
There you go.
Yay.
Good stuff. Okay. That'll take care of that. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Family Whitman, or 2/3 of, or 2/4 of, I should say, half of. We never see them. We never see Jeffrey on the screen.
He likes to just kind of listen off screen.
Oh, okay. Okay. He sits over there and goes, nah, 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 nah.
Pretty much. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Best to everybody. Thank you very much. All right. Now, John H. I'm not even trying to say your last name. How would you pronounce that, John? How do you pronounce it?
I've had various pronunciations, everything from Huckleberry to Hook and Eye, but technically it's pronounced Hillenilek.
I wasn't too far off, but I just can't wrap my tongue around it too often.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a little bit of a tongue twister. I've had lots of years of telling people how to pronounce it, so I can do it pretty easily.
Okay. Well, why don't you start off with giving us a little bit about who you are and how you're related to the Blue Water Astronomical Society, and then you may proceed into your little discussion.
Okay, I'm just going to start off with the first slide in my presentation, if that's okay. Because is that visible there?
It's visible.
Okay, good. The my interest in astronomy arose more from this one image. We were talking about, what got people started. But my interest arose more from this one image, I think, than anything else. I was around in the day when the Sputnik was flying in the sky, and that never twigged with me. But I was also involved with photography at my high school, and part of the yearbook staff as well there. So I was into cameras in a big way for a long time. And when I started teaching in Wyerton in 1970, but in 1972, when this photograph was taken, it really twigged my interest in astronomy in a big way. There's a long story behind this particular image, but the short version of it is I went out, set up my camera, Ektachrome film, 2-hour shot. I was at the movies in Owen Sound while this image was being taken. I was just thrilled with the star trails. And I've loved taking star trail images with different kinds of foreground objects ever since. But about a dozen years ago, I had a good close look at this photograph again for some reason. And I noticed there were 4 satellite tracks on it. Now, if you go back to January 1972, how many satellites were up in the sky? There's certainly nothing like what we see these days by any stretch. But I was actually able to determine that the 4 tracks on this were, at least 2 of them were Landsat satellites that were launched for short periods of time. And there were 2 in orbit at the time when this photograph was taken. I have not identified the other 2. They may well have been spy satellites of one country or another. You may remember it was a different era in 1972. Anyway, so there's my story, personal story of how things, how my interest in astronomy evolved from the photography end of it. And then as teaching science at the local high school, I got into the optics, and the telescope stuff came as a sort of a natural continuation of that. Okay, I'm speaking actually a little bit sort of as an appendix to Paul Delaney's talk last month. He talked about the importance of grazing occultations as far as obtaining scientific information was concerned. Well, here is my little remembrance of that. As a high school teacher back in the 70s, I started an astronomy club at my local high school. Also, there was another one in Lions Head under Doug Cunningham. And between the 2 of us, we would do, we would watch lunar eclipses and do observing and get our telescopes periodically. One of the things that we did as a group was chase grazes. That's the technical term, if you like, of what you do when you get the predictions for a grazing occultation from the International Organization of Occultation Timers, IOTA, and they would send around every month great sheets of predictions for our area. And we happen to have a graze of Aldebaran. It's very rare to get a graze of a first magnitude star. So we mounted a major expedition to observe this graze. It was going to happen in our backyard, and we just could not pass it up. So both astronomy clubs, the Lions Head group, about a dozen students there, a dozen in my own, plus the Toronto Center of the RASC under Dan Driscoll, organized a group expedition to observe this particular graze. Ultimately, we had 18 stations. And by that, I mean 18 telescopes with an observer equipped with a time recorder, a tape recorder, and a shortwave radio to record time signals. Nowadays, it's much easier to do this sort of thing with just video and getting a time signal, a timestamp on the video of the event. But in those days, we would just tape record our comments. We would say off or on when the star disappeared behind a mountain on the moon and reappeared in a valley. And we would then take those tapes and they would be playing, that we would be playing the shortwave time signals in the background. There would be beeps going on, you know. This was sometimes disconcerting to the neighbors, because all of a sudden a group of observers with all kinds of instruments that looked a lot like rifles showed up on the sides of the roads, and then there's all this beeping going on. It wasn't once that we were actually approached by OPP at one point trying to determine what we were up to, but we eventually learned that we notify the OPP first before we go to a particular spot. So in December of 1979, Aldebaran was grazing the moon. We were going to have a total of 8 events. And by that, I mean a disappearance behind a mountain, a reappearance in a valley, a disappearance behind the next mountain, reappearance in another valley, etc. for 8 events, ons and offs, all the way along. We set up 18 stations with a variety of different telescopes, as I've described. And we spent the early evening on a road between Chesley Lake and Gould Lake. Those of you who know the Bruce Peninsula will know that where that location is. And we just waited for Aldebaran to be occulted by the moon in this fashion. It was a glorious night, as it turned out. December 1972 is actually remembered by some other old timers like myself as being the year that grass was still green, even at Christmas time in the lawns, much perhaps like some non-white Christmases that we've had ourselves lately. Anyway, we did the observations. We got a beautiful evening for it, and then of course dispersed to our home schools. This is a photograph of the group in the physics lab at Wyerton High School ahead of time. The gentleman right in the center is Dan Driscoll from the RESC, but there are others. Most of the young folks here are now in their 50s. As you can imagine, this was a 1979 event. And many of them are still actually friends of mine. One of them happens to be a real estate agent in our area. So here's what we got, and I'll finish with this slide because it's interesting from a whole variety of different things. Back in 1972, the Occultation Timing Association basically took on the job of mapping not just the position of the moon, but features on the moon for a variety of purposes, including the Apollo landing programs. But this was something that you could do basically in your backyard as citizen scientists. And we didn't call ourselves that in those days. That's our more recent term, but that's what we were. We were out there doing real science. And it was just a thrill to be able to do that with our students. And the kids loved it. They ate this stuff up. On this particular occasion, we were unfortunate in the sense that only 5 stations out of the 18 that we had set up actually saw any events. I was up there on number 7, the dotted line number 7. That was me. I had a miss. The star just appeared to pass across the limb of the moon and did not disappear or reappear in any mountains. It wasn't occulted. The groups that were down at stations 14 through 18 did see disappearances and reappearances, and we plotted those. Those are the solid lines going across. And the dotted line that we see there is the predicted profile. Back in those days, there were some preliminary measurements made and available to us of what the profile should look like. That's why we knew that we were going to get about 8 events. Some of the observers got 10 and 12. So there were additional features that were not on the original predictions that we actually observed. And you can see there's a big splotch there on the right end of the diagram where the dotted line goes up and down again. And we were actually seeing several different mountain peaks based on the observations of 2 or 3 of those stations. And, they're reasonably reliable, even though they're students. It's not a big deal to actually just to monitor a star and give a shout when it goes off and give a shout when it goes on, and then translate that information into essentially a top map, if you like, of the surface of the moon. So I'm happy to say that between the Toronto Centre and the 2 astronomy clubs, Lions Head and Wyerton, we literally discovered some new features on the moon. And when we pointed this out to the organizers, David Dunlap was the individual involved. Dunham, and David Dunham, and his answer was, "Well, it looks like you guys found some new features on the moon that we didn't know were there." So I thought maybe this might be an interesting, as I say, appendix to Paul Delaney's talk, illustrating some of the sort of practicalities and some of the actual benefits of doing grazing occultations. And it's not beyond the capabilities of all of us as amateur astronomers. We have equipment individually, video equipment in particular nowadays, that can do these kind of things, and I heartily recommend it. It is a real hoot to see a star like Aldebaran disappear behind the edge of the moon. And when it does so along the margin of the moon, and it reappears and disappears in mountains and valleys, it's really spectacular to see this event. The universe essentially revealing itself on the fly.
Awesome. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Something that, you know, even if you've seen, as you had here, the occultation of Aldebaran, and even if it's over the same portion of the moon, or the same colatitude, or colongitude, sorry, you can get a different result because of vibration. So you may be seeing on one observation, you may be seeing the more southern edge of the crater walls and such, and vibration a couple of years later will have it that you're seeing the farther north of the same target on the moon.
Yes, absolutely. That's definitely the situation. And the equation that describes the motion of the moon is pages and pages and pages long. There are so many individual variables that affect how far away it is, the orientation, the libration, as you mentioned, that you're always literally getting a different view of the moon on every night. The neat thing about what we were doing was that by setting up observers perpendicular to the path that Aldebaran appeared to be following across the moon, we could actually see a profile essentially of the moon, because the star would disappear and reappear at different elevations on the features on the surface. So that was really neat to see that profile appear when we plotted that information from the time settings.
Any questions for John? I guess everybody knows everything there is to know about it. Thank you, John.
Pleasure.
Stick around for a bit. Okay. Thank you very much. Matthew.
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, you're not gone to sleep on us? That's good.
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
Never have yet.
Okay, the floor is all yours, or the screen's yours, I should say.
All right. I'll try not to make it really long. Hang on, I'm going to get rid of this header.
Take whatever time you need.
The heck, why is that? Hide.
And it's too cloudy to go running out and doing any astronomy tonight, so there's nothing else to do. Might as well listen to you. I don't mean it that way.
Okay. You can see everything? You can hear me?
Yep,
it's
we're all good.
All right, so welcome to the Sky This Month for February of 22. My first topic tonight is one of those good news, bad news stories that you occasionally hear about in astronomy. I'll give you the bad news first. The bad news is that a week ago, Thursday, SpaceX sent up another 49 of its Starlink satellites. They're sending up thousands and thousands of them, so you'll have internet every square millimeter of the planet. But anyways, they sent up a group of 49, and out of the 49, 40 deorbited and burned up in the atmosphere. So I guess the good news about all this is that 40 of them burned up and, you know, disintegrated in the atmosphere. So most of you will know what I mean by that. But why did this happen? So the launch took place on schedule. the Falcon 9 distributed the 49 Starlink satellites at an orbit of about 210 kilometers, which is really very low. They do this apparently with every launch so that they can do system checkouts on each of the satellites, and the ones that are no good, they let them just burn up, and the rest then get pushed up into a higher orbit. So what happened was, when they launched, the solar wind from the sun was pretty normal, and everything was good. And then there was a minor storm on the sun, and the solar wind pressure went up, and the amount of energy we got went up, and the atmosphere on the Earth expanded slightly, and it increased the drag by 50% at that altitude of 210 kilometers. So once SpaceX realized this was happening, they put them all into safe mode, and what it does is it orients them so they fly like a sheet of paper through the very top region of the atmosphere to try and minimize the drag they're subject to. And by the time this all finished and they could, access them again properly, well, they couldn't leave safe mode because they were still under a lot of drag. I guess they couldn't allow for that in the actual satellites themselves. And 40 of them continued to deorbit and burned up out of the 49. So here you can see this diagram on the right shows you the amount of solar wind we're getting, and there's the launch part there on Thursday, and then you can see on Friday we had this relatively minor solar storm, but it was enough that the atmospheric drag increased enough that they burned up. So there you go. I guess they've never run into this before. I've never heard about it before, but still, there's a first time for everything. Now, one of these things about all these satellites that not only they are sending up, but Amazon and somebody else is sending up thousands of more of these satellites, is they're creating trails across the sky of light, and it's playing havoc with the professional and amateur astronomers, especially if you're trying to do astrophotography. So you can end up now with some images. This one on the left side here, that's an individual shot, one frame, and it happens to have two lines on it. One is probably a satellite, the other one might be a plane, who knows. And I've seen shots where there's 8 or 10 lines across the frame, and this is really upsetting. Now, SpaceX has been trying to figure out how to reduce the amount of reflection off those satellites, which is at its worst near the horizons at suns as they come up on one side, and like in the west, and go down in the east or whatever. It's that the lower altitudes that we're seeing a lot of reflection, just the angle that happens to be there. So there are ways though you can get rid of these lines. So here's a little bit of astrophotography information. So this is one image taken of the horse head in the flame. What you normally do is you take a bunch of images that look exactly the same. They might be like 30 of them of 2 minutes each. You stack them, and then you process them in Photoshop, and you end up with this. And you can see there are no trails, satellite trails in this at all, or airplane trails or anything. Now, Deep Sky Stacker is the actual program that you stack your photos in, all your individual frames. And there's a couple of options in there that allow you to get rid of any of these trails, and it's called Kappa Sigma signal rejection. And what happens is that for every single pixel of every single frame that it stacks, it says, is it good or is it bad? And it will do various things depending on how you're stacking. This is one of the pages from Deep Sky Stacker. This is a stacking mode on this tab right here. And you can see there's about 7 different ways that you can stack all these individual frames one on top of the other. So imagine it like a pile of pancakes. These are all your pictures are piled one on top of the other. And what it does is by stacking them is it increases the signal to noise ratio, which means that you get a cleaner image. And there's 2 settings that really get rid of satellite trails and airplane trails: Kappa Sigma clipping and median Kappa Sigma clipping. It sounds really complicated, but I'll go back one page here. So let's pretend, I hope you can see my pointer here. Let's pretend that you're on that red line right in the middle of that little white area there. So you shoot 5 frames, you go to stack it. And the first 4 frames, that little dot there is white. And on the 5th one, it's red. Well, Deep Sky Stacker says white, 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 all good, red, oops, bad. If you use just the regular Kappa Sigma rejection, it literally says that pixel's no good. I'm only going to use the information from 4 frames for that pixel. And it just eliminates that other pixel. If you use the median version of that, which is the next option, what it does almost the same thing. It'll go to that pixel and it'll say white, 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 all good, red, bad. And what it does, instead of just eliminating that pixel on that frame, it goes in, it says, what's sort of the median of the values for the other 4 images? And it says, I'll take that and supplement or replace the pixel value on the one bad frame. So what was red for that 1 pixel is now white. Sounds complicated, but really the software does all the work. You just tell it what you want and it will stack it really nicely for you. So this is how we're able to still do astrophotography in an age where the whole sky is going to be crisscrossed with thousands of lines every night. It's really, really disturbing, actually. Today at about 2:30, NASA released this image. It's a James Webb selfie, and it was released today, as it says here, by an engineering camera that's mounted on the near infrared camera in front of the main mirror. So I didn't realize there were any engineering cameras on here, but there is at least one. So this is what the mirror looks like as it sits out there at L2, calibrating all of the individual mirror segments, getting ready to do its first imaging in about 3 or 4 months. Here's another story. This was one I've been following on and off on cloudy nights for over a year. And it's told by a fellow by the name of Augustin on cloudy nights. He lives in Argentina. And he was looking on Facebook Marketplace in Argentina, and he found a Zeiss refractor for sale for $1,500. And there was a couple of really crummy pictures of what it looked like, but it came on cloudy nights and said, is this a good deal? And the people on the Classic Telescope site, they went berserk and just said, just buy it, buy it, buy it. Don't even think, just buy it. So he did. And then he wanted to know the story behind it. And what happened was that about 1920 or so, this fellow Marcelo de Alvear, who was actually the president of Argentina at one time, he ordered a Zeiss 110 millimeter refractor. So the 110 millimeters is the size of the objective, the business end of the telescope. Anyways, he must have had some parties, drank some wine, people came over, and they looked through the telescope, and they liked they saw so much that 12 more Zeiss scopes got ordered in the next few years and ended up in Argentina. Most of them were the same size as his. Some were bigger, some had equatorial mounts. But what's really interesting is apparently most of them are still there. And some of them are in various institutions, and other ones are still with the families, in some cases, the original owners. So this particular scope that this fellow Augustin bought, the last family member passed away some years ago, and a lot of the contents of the place went to one of the workers, and the worker decided to sell everything. So this scope went up for sale on Facebook. So this is the beautiful case it came in. You notice this is a mattress here, a bed mattress, and the box is as long as the mattress. So you're looking at about a 6.5 foot box. And it also came with all these other lovely old boxes full of stuff. Here's a picture of the tube, main tube, and this beautiful brass finder scope there. And then boxes, like I said, of stuff. And in some cases, a few of the pieces that were in these boxes are worth somewhere close to the $1,500 he paid for everything. Interesting little tidbit here is back in the day, they didn't just put the focal length of the eyepieces on, like 9, 12.5, 25, 7. They put the actual magnification for that eyepiece, for that scope, which is kind of interesting. I'm not even sure what this is, but it looks really cool, and I suspect it's one of the really expensive bits. There's a bino viewer on the left, which is also really worth probably a ton of money, and a Barlow over here. There was so much cool stuff. So anyways, it finally got assembled, and the fellow Augustin sent some follow-up pictures to Cloudy Nights. And this is amazing. Here's the scope on the left outside. You can see the size of it. It's immense. It's an Altaz mount, very simple, with a big cranking wheel here so you can turn it in azimuth. And you can see the height of the people here. And that scope is at least 6.5 feet long, probably by the time you add on the dew shield and everything. It's huge. And in this other picture, he shows it set up inside the house. There's the mattress with the box on it, by the way. For an idea of scale, here's a bottle of apparently Malbec red wine from Argentina. Gives you an idea of the scale. Beautiful tripod. The screws that were able, so you could level the mount and the tripod. And look at the size of this thing. It is awesome. And apparently the views are super crisp. It's an achromat because they didn't have appos really back in that day. But at f16, it's a super sharp, well-corrected achromat. So the views, even now, would be considered really, really good. And if you put modern eyepieces in there, it'd blow you away. So if anybody ever says they got a Zeiss for sale, you know, and you look at it, it looks kind of like that, you might want to purchase it, even if it's just to eventually resell it. But wouldn't you just love to have one of those? You need a bigger car. So I was reading in Sky News, the January-February edition, and there was an article about Caldwell objects. Now, I had said to John Govro a couple of months ago, I think I'm going to talk about Caldwell objects this winter. And sure enough, as happens just about every time, I looked at the magazine and there's a thing about Caldwell objects in there. So we all know the Messier list, right? 110 objects, Messier, most of which he put in. The last 20 or so were from other people. Well, Sir Patrick Moore in England, who's really well known. He was the guy with the monocle who used who wrote lots of books in England and was always on the BBC. Anyways, he thought he'd come up with his own list. And so he did it just for fun and sent it to, I believe, Sky and Telescope, who ended up publishing it. And it's really kind of a weird list in that it just goes from really high declination, so near the North Pole, to really low declination in the southern sky. Some of them you have to go to like Australia to see them. So I'm not quite sure why a guy at 50 degrees north would want to put those in a list of things you could look at. But anyways, that's what he did. They all have the C in front for Caldwell. And this is the list that's in Sky News this month. Now, I started reading it and right away I was like, that's not so easy. How come they put this one in? They're supposed to be easy. So I went through the list and just rated them from very easy to maybe to not so much to not so easy, you know, kind of like that. It was all over the place in terms of what you could see. So what I've done is gone through them this way. What you can see is an image of the night sky. You can look at the time down here. The date is tomorrow, but you can look at the sky here. This is at 7 p.m. And the target here is the Hyades. So for those of you just starting out, the Hyades are the head of the bull in Taurus. And if you're going to try and find the Hyades, you can start at Orion and go to the top right star, which is Bellatrix, and draw a line straight up to the Pleiades. And halfway in between is Taurus. And you'll see the V of the head of the bull, and that is Caldwell 41. So that's a really easy one. Naked eye, even in a town like Brantford, it's naked eye. I don't know about Hamilton, probably not so much, but you know, get away from the really bad light pollution. You can see this naked eye. The next one is the double cluster in Perseus. This is a really striking double cluster. It looks fantastic. And even the smallest refractor, it's nice in binoculars, but a refractor or a small Daub, Newtonian, whatever, really brings it out. And it's a beautiful sight for sure. It's also rated very easy. It's naked eye, like I said. And to find it, you find Cassiopeia, the big W here. And then you find Perseus over here. And halfway in between, you should be able to pick up, especially with binoculars, the double cluster. That's one you can go back to look over and over. The colors in it are gorgeous. It is a beautiful sight. Well, 28. Now, this is a different kettle of fish. On the right here, you can see an image of it, and you can see this is the cluster, and you can see compared against the background, which, by the way, is part of the Milky Way, just the edge of the Milky Way, which runs up here. You can see that's going to be hard to see. It's very sparse. But the way to get to it is to go to Almach, which is at the end of Andromeda, and then draw a line, you know, roughly to the center of Triangulum, this little tiny constellation here, and in the middle, you should be able to find it. But I reckon that that one's not quite as easy to see as some of the others. The saving grace is that at 8 o'clock at night, it's still at 50 plus degrees above the horizon. So you don't have as much air to look through. Seeing should be a bit better. You probably have a chance of seeing that one. Now this one is ridiculous. I don't have a clue why they put IC 342 in here. I happen to know about this particular galaxy because I've imaged it at Cherry Springs in super dark skies. And with a 10-minute exposure, it's still dim. I have not any idea why they included this. If you're a beginner or even intermediate, you've got almost no hope, especially with any light pollution, of ever seeing any of this. If you were really, really lucky and you could get to a dark enough site, you might see the core. But to see the arms or anything else, most normal human beings, I don't think are going to have much hope. So I have absolutely no idea why that's in the easy section. This particular one, 342, is in Camelopardalis, which is again at the edge of the Milky Way. This is one of the dark lanes here, and it is actually, this galaxy is actually hidden behind partially some of the dust in our own galaxy. This 342 is about 11 million light years away. It's spectacular. If there was no dust there, it would be one of the best galaxies in the night sky, 3/4 of a degree across, face on, bright, gorgeous, but the dust just knocks it to bits and you can hardly see it. And so I have no idea why it's there. This other one is a small galaxy, really high up in the sky at about 67, 68 degrees at about 10:30 at night. And this is Caldwell 7. What's nice about this one is that it's really compact, but still a decent size, about a third the size of the moon, at least in terms of that axis, long axis there. And what's really nice is that the spiral arms are really tight, and the whole object, or at least most of it, is quite bright. It's got good surface brightness on it. So you do have a really good chance of seeing that even in a small instrument. Unfortunately, this is where it is, which is kind of in the middle of this hole in the sky. So if you go out at 10:30 at night and you look absolutely due north and go straight up through Polaris, another 25 degrees or so towards the zenith, it's right there. So you should be able to find it. There's other ways to star hop to it, but if I was just using binoculars, I would probably try that first. The last two are completely different from each other. The first one, which is Tau Canis Major, is another open cluster. It's right here, and it's in the constellation of Canis Major, the big dog, Sirius, the dog star. Just work back towards the tail, and right here where the tail joins the back end of the dog, and go up to the left a bit, you're going to hit this cluster. I don't think it's really huge, but look at that star at the center of it, a foreground star with lots of really nice sort of loops of stars going around it that are bright. This one should be a binocular object. Should be able to see it, at least make it out. It should be fantastic even in a small telescope. It gets to about 20 degrees above the horizon when it's due south. So it's probably doable unless we've got really bad light pollution or the air is really like horrible, lots of moisture in it and seeing's terrible. But under normal circumstances, it's high enough that you'd probably see it. The last one they mentioned is C71, which is a really gorgeous open cluster, which nobody is going to see around here unless they're super lucky, because it never exceeds 8 degrees above the horizon. So I know I was out a few nights ago with my bigger binoculars, mid-sized ones, and I was looking at this region, and I got down to about here before the sky got so muddy that the stars just disappeared. So that's at about 18, 19 degrees maybe. This is too far down. I don't see how you're ever going to see this through all the air masses you're looking through, all the pollution, all the light pollution, the moisture. But I think if you were really absolutely going to try and see it, you could probably do it from the top of the mountain on the escarpment somewhere where you've got a clear view to the south. Or maybe go down to Port Rowan and go to the park, which is at the top of the hill just before you get to the lake. You might be able to see it over Lake Erie. I think those are just a few of the places where you might be able to get high enough that you can get above some of the air right at ground level and have a look. Anyways, there's lots of other Caldwell objects that are in the sky in winter, and I'm really surprised they didn't pick a few other ones. One of the issues with the Caldwell list is that a lot of them are really small, faint galaxies that most people in a, with a 6-inch Dob or something like that, they're really not going to see very much. So some of his choices were rather suspect, but he is, or was, Sir Patrick Moore, so not too many people are going to argue with him. Again, I was reading about events, and I read this one, February 12th, Venus at greatest illuminated extent. And I went, what? And right away, I thought about greatest eastern or western elongation of a planet. And that's what I thought. But when I modeled it in Stellarium, it made no sense. And in fact, I was totally wrong. So I did a bit of learning as well. And so what I found out, I already knew about elongation. I didn't know about this greatest illuminated extent. So for those who don't know, when Venus or Mercury get around in their orbit, they get to points where they reach visually from our perspective the furthest distance angular wise or angle wise from the sun. So anywhere else they appear in their orbit, they're closer than if they're here from our perspective, okay? And what you'll notice is that this is Venus in this particular case. You'll notice that Venus is half lit from our perspective, like a quarter moon. And you'll notice that when it comes around in its orbit and goes directly between us and the sun, that's called inferior conjunction. And you can't see it then. It's literally in the right behind the sun or in the glare of the sun. Can't see it. But a couple of months later, it has gotten to here, greatest western elongation. And again, it's a half lit. And that's what the elongations are. What about greatest illuminated extent? Well, here's another sort of graphic of the orbit of Venus. You can see when it's full, it's very, very far away, it's very tiny. And as it comes around in its orbit, it gets bigger and it starts going into phases, just like the moon. And this is greatest elongation east, half lit. And then when you get to here, it's just a narrow crescent, only 25% lit. But look at how big it is in comparison to when it's full or when it's a half. It's really big, okay? And this happens about 1 month before inferior conjunction. And then after that, a month later, we get the other greatest illuminated extent, but the crescent's on the other side as it orbits relative to us. So the definition of this is when the sunlit portion of Venus presents its maximum angular area, it's at its greatest illuminated extent. Or you can say when the sunlit bit covers the most sky. Okay, so as Venus gets bigger, as it comes closer to us, obviously it covers more square arc seconds of sky. Or you can just say when it's at its brightest. Basically, those are all the same thing. And so I learned something this week. Now, there is a formula for all these kinds of things that I found. And this is the one for greatest illuminated extent. So it's not as bad as it looks because the data is available on any planetarium program like Stellarium. And what it is A is the area in square arc seconds that's illuminated. And you've got pi times the fraction of the planet that's illuminated, so 50% or 25% or whatever. D is the diameter of the planet in arc seconds. And then you square it and you divide the whole thing by 4. And it gives you a number, which is in square arc seconds. So I go into stellarium. I look for it when it's at greatest elongation east, and it's 50% lit. Stellarium tells you how much it's lit, so it's good. You can figure it right out. And here's a diameter, 24.5 arc seconds. Venus goes from when it's full, it's only like 12 arc seconds, to when it's closest, just before it goes in front of the sun, it's at about 62, 63 arc seconds. And actually, so here's sort of a relative size when it's at 50% and again at 25%. Anyways, you do the math right here. So half lit, 24.5 arc seconds, comes out to 236 square arc seconds. Okay, so that's the amount of Venus that is reflecting light towards us, and it's the area of the sky it fills, the lit part. When it gets to its greatest illuminated extent, which is when it's at its brightest, it's only 25% lit, but look at the size of it. It's gone from 24.5 arc seconds across to 40.5. And when you run it through the math, you get 322 square arc seconds. So if this is a bit hard for you to figure out, think about it as rooms in a really big house, much bigger than my house actually. But think about a room where you've got 236 square feet, and think about a room where you've got 322 square feet. This is obviously much bigger. And when you take that difference and you put it up in the sky, you're covering more of the sky. And that's what leads to it being brighter. And that's it for tonight. I fried your brain for the last part, so the end.
Thank you, Matt. Entertaining as always. Where are we here? He's talking about the Caldwell objects. A great book. Anyone thinking about doing the Caldwell should get this book. Let me get.
Is it the Marco Mira book?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's hard to find.
Caldwell Objects. It's a great book. Very few errors in it. There is an errata available for it. I have done the Caldwell observing program through the Astronomical League. And fortunately, you don't have to get 100% of the list. If you're a northern observer, you have to get the northern stuff, obviously, and you have some optional stuff. But and you still get the award and the pin. So anybody interested in trying that, take a look at the Astronomical League. They'll have the Caldwell there. Take a look at it and give it a shot. In fact, you've probably done about a quarter of the list already with just looking at your regular Messier and NGC stuff.
Correct. One fellow here, Brett, he actually noticed that the way that big scope, that Zeiss was mounted in the right-hand picture, that it won't work. It's actually mounted on the fork backwards. I didn't mention that. I did see that, but I didn't mention it because I thought it was kind of irrelevant, but it's kind of interesting that somebody actually noticed that the darn thing was on backwards for that picture. Outside it was correct, inside it wouldn't have worked. It's probably just as well.
Well, yeah, you're not going to be looking at much from inside.
No.
Okay, thank you. And does anybody have any question for Matthew before I close it down here?
I just have one comment. At one point, Matthew said that at inferior conjunction for Venus, you cannot see it. That's not quite right. And I just did a check here with Starry Night, but at inferior conjunction on January the 8th this year, Venus was still shining in the sky at -4 magnitude. Okay, so if you can't see a -4 star, even though it's daytime.
Well, there's a reason I talk like that. It's because especially for beginners, I don't want anybody looking at the sun.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's why I make it.
That was going to be my
simple.
Next.
Right?
That was going to be my next. That was going to be my next comment. You don't want to look at it except very, very carefully. So it was only 5 degrees from the sun, and that can be very deadly, even just a glancing look at it. But,
right.
Venus has always fascinated me from that point of view. And I have attempted to see it in the daytime. It's even harder than seeing a really, really thin moon.
Actually, I think about 1 or 2 months ago, people like John Govro and Joanne and Ann, I think they actually went outside on purpose and looked for it in the daytime sky and saw it. So yeah, there was actually a concerted effort by a few people to do that, and they succeeded. So that was kind of cool.
Well, it's a very amazing thing when I do starry nights or stargazing. Oftentimes I'll do a daytime event and you know, point your telescope in the sky, you know where Venus is, and boom, there's the planet. And before you know it, you can actually, you know, see it in the daytime with your naked eye. So it's for daytime astronomy, the sun and Venus are certainly high on the top of my list.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's always fun when you see things when you're not supposed to be able to.
That's true.
Anyway, thank you, folks. Thanks to all of our speakers tonight from near and far. Love having you around.
Yes, yes.
Next month, our speaker will be Mr. John Reed, author of the 50 Things to See on the Moon and 50 Things to See with the Telescope. He will be speaking to us pretty much in keeping with the theme of observing programs. He's going to speak to us about the more common, more popular RASC programs, which we have one similar, which is the Messier. But we'll be here. And that's it from me. If there's anything else, does anybody have something they want to throw out here before I close it down?
Yeah, just a thanks to all our speakers. They were great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, good. Thank you, guys. Oh, yes, I better say it. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving yes, a Thanksgiving that you've got the one that you love for Valentine's Day. There, how's that for pulling it out of the fat?
Was it turkey fat?
Yeah, that's made turkey. Yeah. I'm sorry. I made a turkey sandwich whilst we were listening to our speaker there.
I thought I'd mention to John H. there that I saw you at the birding festival up at McGregor Point, the Huron Fringe. And we only went to one event because we actually weren't in the program, but we signed up for your talk because I think it was my second year as an observing director back then, back around 14. And so I wanted to see how another observing director gave a talk, and it was very interesting to watch somebody else up there doing it. It was good.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can continue this conversation, but I should close the meeting down first. We will see you everybody back here on Friday, March the 11th. Okay, and in between now and then, of course, we do have another episode or session of Astronomy 101. Don't forget about that. And if you are new and you're just joined us as a club member, you are more than welcome to join into the 101 program as well. Just drop me a line, chair@amateurastronomy.org, and I will forward your information to John, who is taking care of all of that for us. And okay, everybody, I was going to say drive safe. Walk safely, don't. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Great show.
Hey, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, all.
So luckily